Elias Ward had spent most of his life under the open sky, where the land stretched so far that a man could think everything was simple if he looked at the horizon long enough. He lived alone on a quiet ranch far from town, with only horses, an old dog, and the wind for company. People knew him as a quiet cowboy, who rarely raised his voice and never asked for more than he needed. But even a man like him, who believed he needed nothing more than land and silence, sometimes felt a loneliness that cut deeper than a winter storm. He first noticed Maya during the drought season. Her family lived near the reservation border, tending a small herd that was suffering terribly from lack of water. Elias had seen her carrying buckets from a distant well, walking with tired shoulders but a determined face. She never complained, never asked for help. But he could see the weight she carried. Her strength wasn't loud. It was quiet, steady, and honest. And that alone caught his attention more than anything in years. At first he helped from a distance. When her father needed spare lumber, some appeared on their porch. When the wind tore a fence apart, the wires were mysteriously tightened by morning. Nobody suspected him at first, but Maya eventually caught sight of him walking away from the fence at sunrise. She didn't speak to him that day, only raised her hand in a small, grateful wave. He nodded back and kept walking, feeling something warm settle in his chest. Weeks passed, and his small acts of help turned into regular visits. He helped fix roofs, move cattle, and carry supplies. He never made it seem like a favor. He worked beside her father and sisters as if he belonged there, though he always remained respectful, keeping distance until invited closer. Maya admired that. He wasn't loud like some men, nor did he try to show off. He simply helped because he wanted their family to be safe. One evening, after a long day of repairing a corral, Maya approached him while he was tightening a loose nail. She stood there with her hands folded, hesitating like she was building up courage. "You always help," she said softly. Why? He thought about it. There were a dozen reasons, but he only answered the one that mattered. "Because you deserve someone in your corner," he said simply. The way she looked at him after that moment stayed with him for days. As time went on, she began talking to him more. She told him about the traditions she grew up with, how her family followed old customs to honor their ancestors. She shared stories of harsh winters and good summers, of her mother's teachings and her father's quiet wisdom. Elias listened with full attention, because every word she spoke felt like she was opening a door into her world, and she didn't open that door for many people. Eventually, Maya realized she trusted him, truly trusted him. And when a woman like her trusted someone, she didn't hide it behind walls. She stood in front of him one evening with the orange sunset glowing behind her and said, with a shy but steady voice, "I want you to meet my family properly." Elias's heart kicked in his chest. He had been around her family before, but only during work. Meeting them properly meant something else, something bigger. He took off his hat respectfully and nodded. "I'd be honored." The next evening he rode to her home, dressed neatly in the best clothes he owned, even though they were still simple, worn at the edges. He wasn't a man of fancy things, but he was a man who knew how to show respect, and he hoped her family would see that. When he arrived, Maya greeted him outside with a nervous smile. He could tell she was worried about how the meeting might go. He reassured her with a quiet, "I'll be all right." Whether he believed that or not didn't matter. He wanted her to feel at ease. She led him into the house where her two older sisters, Tala and Rena, were waiting. The moment he stepped inside, he felt the shift in the air. These women were not unkind, but they were protective. Their eyes studied him carefully, measuring his intentions, his posture, even how he breathed. They carried themselves with confidence and dignity, the kind of presence that told him they had been through hardships and learned to stand firm. Tala, the eldest, was calm and serious. She looked like someone who had spent her life keeping the family together. Rena, the middle sister, had a sharp gaze like she could see through lies before they were even spoken. Maya's father sat by the fireplace, watching quietly, not speaking yet. His silence carried more weight than words. Elias greeted each of them politely, keeping his hat in his hands. He stood tall, but humble. After a moment of silence, Tala stepped forward. Her voice was steady and respectful, but firm enough to make any man straighten his spine. "Cowboy," she said, "if you want to marry our sister, then by sacred law, you must satisfy the sisters first." Elias froze. He didn't know what to say or how to react. The words hit him like a sudden clap of thunder. His eyes flicked toward Maya, wondering if he had heard correctly, but Maya only looked down, knowing this moment was coming. Tala noticed his confusion and clarified before his thoughts wandered anywhere strange or inappropriate. Her next words were slow, clear, and filled with tradition. "Satisfy the sisters means earn our approval. In our family, we protect our own. No man marries our sister unless he proves he has a good heart. You must pass the tests each sister chooses. Only then can our family accept you." Rena stepped forward. "We judge character, honesty, responsibility. These are the laws passed down to us. You must show us who you truly are." Relief washed through Elias, but the challenge still felt heavy. These were not simple tests. These women were guardians of their family. Winning their approval meant proving himself on a level deeper than words. He looked at Maya, who finally met his eyes. There was worry in her face, but also hope. "I understand," Elias said quietly. "If this is the way your family decides what's right, then I'll stand before your tests." Her father finally spoke for the first time, his voice deep but not unkind. "A man willing to be tested is a man willing to learn. We will see who you truly are in time." Elias nodded again, keeping his posture respectful. Inside, his heart was pounding not from fear, but from the weight of how much Maya meant to him. He didn't know what challenges the sisters would give, or whether he would pass, but he knew one thing with certainty. She was worth every test, every effort, every moment of proving himself. As he left that evening, the cool night air wrapped around him, carrying the scent of sagebrush and dust. He looked back at the house, warm with lamplight, and felt the beginning of something bigger than he had ever expected. He wasn't just stepping into a family's home. He was stepping into their world, their traditions, their expectations, and for the first time in years, Elias felt that the loneliness he carried might finally have a place to rest if he could prove himself worthy. The next morning, Elias woke up before sunrise, long before the world even began to stir. He lay in bed for a moment, staring at the wooden ceiling of his small cabin, replaying the sisters' words in his mind. He wasn't a man who feared hard work, yet something about this challenge carried a deeper weight. This wasn't fixing a fence or managing cattle. This was proving to an entire family and especially to Maya that he was a man worthy of trust. He sat up, put on his boots, and stepped outside. The morning air felt crisp, and the ground was still cold. A soft, pink light began climbing up the sky as the sun prepared to rise, and Elias breathed in slowly. Today would be the first test, and he had no idea what Tala planned for him. By the time he saddled his horse and rode toward Maya's home, the sun had risen halfway. He could see smoke curling from their chimney, and the smell of warm bread drifted through the air. It calmed him a little, though his heart still beat with a steady pressure. When he arrived, Maya was sweeping the porch. She looked up, and her eyes softened when she saw him. "You came early," she said. "I figured it's better than showing up late," he replied with a small smile. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "My sister Tala takes her role very seriously. She believes the first test must show if a man can carry responsibility without giving up." Elias nodded. "That's fair." Before Maya could say more, Tala stepped out from the house, dressed in work clothes and wearing gloves. She carried a rolled-up piece of paper and handed it to Elias. "This is the shelter we need rebuilt," she said. "A storm destroyed it last month. It protects our animals during bad weather. If you want to marry our sister, you must help restore what protects us." Elias unrolled the paper. It was a rough drawing, a structure made of wood beams, metal sheets, and fencing. It would take days to finish. He looked up at Tala, who met his eyes firmly. "I will work with you," she said. "But you must take the lead. You must show you can guide, plan, and stay steady even when things go wrong. Elias accepted the challenge with a nod. They walked together toward the damaged shelter. Pieces of broken wood lay scattered. Some metal sheets were bent, and the posts leaned crookedly. Elias crouched down, touching the wood. It was rotted in places, weakened by years of heat and rain. "We'll have to replace these beams," he said, "and reinforce the foundation." Tala watched him with a silent but observant expression. "Good start." Elias took off his jacket, set his hat aside, and got straight to work. Tala joined him without hesitation. From morning to midday, they carried lumber, measured beams, dug holes, and leveled the ground. The sun grew hot, but neither of them slowed. Although Tala was smaller than Elias, she moved with surprising strength and stamina. Every time Elias lifted something heavy, Tala was already preparing the next step. But Tala wasn't just watching his work. She was listening to how he spoke, noticing whether he grew frustrated, and observing how he handled mistakes. She asked him questions. "Why do you want to marry Maya?" He hammered a nail before answering. "Because she's strong, and she's kind, and she makes the world feel less empty." Tala didn't respond right away. She simply handed him another board. Later, while aligning a crooked post, she asked, "If you marry her, you'll join our family. You'll have responsibilities. Are you ready for that?" Elias wiped sweat from his forehead. "I won't pretend I know everything," he said honestly. "But I'm not afraid to learn. And I don't walk away from people who depend on me." Tala heard the sincerity in his voice. She didn't praise him, she wasn't the type, but she worked a little more gently after that. By late afternoon, they had rebuilt the frame of the shelter. It wasn't finished, but it was standing strong again. Elias took a deep breath, looking at the progress. Tala also stepped back, inspecting every detail. Maya arrived with cool water and bread. She watched Elias working and couldn't hide her admiration. His clothes were dusty, his hands bruised, and his hair messy. Yet he looked more confident than she had ever seen. "You're doing well," she said softly. He smiled at her. "I'm trying my best." Tala watched the small exchange between them. Her eyes softened just a little, though she said nothing. They returned to work until the sun began to set. The sky was painted orange and purple, and long shadows stretched across the land. Elias's arms ached, and his legs felt heavy, but he kept working because he knew this wasn't just a test. This was a message. He was willing to stand beside her family, not just beside Maya. When they finally stopped, Tala wiped her hands on her gloves and looked at the structure. Good progress for one day. Elias expected her to walk away, but instead she turned to him. "My test isn't finished," she said, "but today I learned something." He waited silently. "You don't give up easily," she continued. "You work with respect. You don't rush. You don't complain." Her eyes held a deep, thoughtful look. "These things matter in a husband. They matter in a family." Elias was surprised to hear such open acknowledgement, but he didn't interrupt. "Tomorrow we finish the roof. The day after, the fencing. If you keep working like today," she said slowly, "you might just pass my test." That was the closest thing to approval he could hope for. Before he left, Maya walked him to the edge of the property. The air was cool now, and the wind carried the gentle scent of sage. She looked up at him with gratitude shining in her eyes. "I saw how hard you worked," she said. "Tala isn't easy to impress." "I'm not doing this just for her," he said. "I know," she replied, her voice soft. "But it still means a lot." He reached for her hand gently, not holding it, just brushing his fingers near hers. "Your family is important to you, so I want to show them that I will respect them just as much as I respect you." Her heart warmed at his words. "Then I believe you will pass." They shared a quiet moment before Elias mounted his horse. As he rode home, the stars appeared one by one above him. The land was dark, but he felt a strange lightness in his chest. He didn't know what challenges were coming next, but today had shown him something important. He could face them as long as Maya believed in him. The next day, he returned early again. Tala was already waiting with tools in hand. They worked even harder than before. They set the roof, fixed the fencing, and reinforced the structure piece by piece. Every day, Tala saw more of who Elias truly was, his patience, his discipline, his quiet humility. And every day, Elias felt himself growing more connected to her family's land, their way of living, and the unspoken respect between them. On the fourth day, when the shelter finally stood complete, solid, strong, and ready for any weather, Tala placed her hand on the new beam. "It will protect us again," she said. Elias swallowed. The moment felt bigger than the task itself. Tala took a deep breath. "You pass my test." The words were simple, but they struck deeply. Elias nodded, trying not to show how much relief washed through him. As he walked away from the shelter with Tala and saw Maya waiting with a hopeful smile, Elias realized something important. This wasn't just about marriage, it was about belonging, and for the first time in years, he felt like he might finally find a place where his heart could rest. After Tala's approval, Elias felt a weight lift from his shoulders. But a new concern quickly replaced it. Rena's test still remained, and she was nothing like Tala. If Tala was steady and thoughtful, Rena was sharp and cautious. She watched everything closely, like someone who had seen too many people pretend to be good. She didn't trust easily, not even a little. And she valued truth more than anything. The morning after finishing the shelter, Elias approached Maya's home again. He wasn't tired, but he felt a nervous energy running through him. He had worked hard to earn Tala's respect through physical labor, but honesty, deep, personal honesty, felt far more difficult. A man could lift heavy beams without showing his fears, but speaking openly about his life left a person exposed. When he arrived, Maya stood outside with Rena beside her. Rena crossed her arms, studying him like she had already started her evaluation the moment he appeared. "You're early," she said. "I figured it was best," Elias replied calmly. "I'm ready for whatever test you have for me." Rena raised an eyebrow. "You say that now. Let's see if you still say it later." "Act." Maya looked nervous for him. Rena placed a reassuring hand on her sister's arm. "Don't worry. I'm only looking for truth." With that, she turned to Elias. "Come with me." Elias followed her as Maya watched anxiously from the porch. He wished he could give her a smile to ease her worry, but Rena moved so quickly that he barely had time to call back a goodbye. Rena led him toward the main path through the small reservation community. Children laughed in the distance, elders sat out near the shade of trees, and people worked in gardens or tended animals. But as soon as Elias walked with Rena, people grew curious. Word had spread quickly. The cowboy helping Maya's family was being tested again. Rena walked with calm steps, but her voice carried a deeper meaning. "My test is simple. I want to know who you are. Not who you pretend to be. Not who you hope to become. Who you truly are." Elias nodded, though tension built in his chest. She stopped in front of the home of an older man sitting on a wooden chair. His hair was mostly gray, and his hands were rough from years of work. Rena greeted him gently. "Uncle Tenno, this is the man who wishes to marry Maya." The elder looked at Elias with thoughtful eyes. "I've seen you helping around. You work hard. That is good." Rena turned to Elias. "Tell him why you want to marry Maya." Elias hesitated only a moment before speaking. "Because she's the kindest person I've ever known. She has a gentle heart, and I feel peace when I'm near her. I want to protect her and support her." The elder nodded slowly. "A good answer, but words are easy. Truth is harder." They walked again, stopping at another home. This time, a woman greeted them. Rena explained Elias's intentions. The woman asked him questions: where he came from, what his family was like, whether he had anyone depending on him. Elias answered each question honestly. He told them he grew up on a ranch far away, that he lost his mother young, and that he had been alone since his brother passed years ago. His voice was steady, but he felt the old pain return each time he spoke of the past. Rena watched every expression, every pause. If he tried to avoid a question, she would ask again, gently but firmly. As they continued their walk, Rena stopped him suddenly near a quiet path. "You speak your truth so far," she said. "But my test is not finished. You must answer my own questions too." Elias nodded. "Ask anything." "Have you ever lied to my sister?" she asked. "No." "Do you plan to take her away from her home?" "No," Elias said firmly. "Her family and her traditions matter. If she chooses me, I'll stand beside her world, not take her from it." Rena studied him long, deep, and silently, as if she was trying to read a book written inside his heart. "Why do you believe you deserve her?" she finally asked. Elias swallowed. "I don't think anyone deserves someone like Maya by default. You earn that kind of love by showing respect, patience, and loyalty. I just want the chance to prove I can be someone she can trust." Rena's eyes softened slightly, but her test wasn't done. They walked again, but this time toward the town center. She stopped near a long wooden bench beneath an old tree. The shade felt comfortable, but Elias sensed something heavy coming. Rena sat down and motioned for him to sit too. "I heard people talk about your past," she said. "They say you lived many years alone. Why?" Elias looked down at his hands. "Because I lost most of my family, and because I made mistakes when I was younger. I started shutting people out." "What mistakes?" she asked gently, but firmly. He took a deep breath. "I didn't know how to ask for help. When my brother got into trouble, I tried to fix everything myself. I thought I had to be strong enough alone. I wasn't. And after he passed, I carried the guilt." Rena didn't speak right away. She let the silence settle, giving him room to breathe. "You blame yourself?" she finally asked. "Some days more than others," he admitted. "But working with your family has taught me something. A person doesn't have to carry everything alone. Maya showed me that without even meaning to." Rena exhaled softly. She wasn't expecting that kind of honesty. She stood and began walking again. Elias followed, feeling lighter after speaking what he had carried for so long. They approached a group of elders sitting and carving wood. The moment Rena introduced him, they looked at Elias with interest. This time, they asked about his dreams. "What do you hope for in life?" one elder asked. "A home that feels warm," Elias answered. "A family to come back to. A place where I'm not just living the days but sharing them with someone." Rena listened with a calm heart. She had heard enough lies from people in her life to know when someone was pretending. But she could hear no pretending in Elias's voice. His answers came from a quiet, honest place. Later, she brought him to the far edge of the community where a small creek ran. The water shimmered in the sunlight. Rena stopped and folded her arms again. "My test has one more part," she said. "You must tell me something difficult. Something you don't tell many people. Something true." Elias nodded slowly. He took time to think, choosing his words carefully. "I'm afraid of losing people," he said. "Not because I'm weak, but because I've lost so many already. And sometimes, I worry I might not be enough for Maya. That she deserves someone better." Rena looked at him with surprise. She didn't expect a cowboy known for strength and silence to admit such vulnerability. "You think like that?" she asked softly. "Sometimes," he said. "But I also believe that love is about trying, not about being perfect." For the first time all day, Rena's expression shifted fully. Not a small change, not a guarded nod, something genuine. She stepped closer and placed a hand on his arm. "That," she said, "is truth." They walked back toward Maya's home in silence. But it wasn't a heavy silence. It was peaceful, filled with understanding. When they reached the house, Maya rushed forward, worry on her face. "How did it go?" Rena looked at Elias, then at her sister. "He passed." Maya's shoulders relaxed at once, and relief washed over her face. Elias felt warmth spread in his chest, deeper than any approval he had received before. Rena added gently, "He is honest. More honest than most men I know. He carries pain but doesn't hide it. And he values you truly." Maya's eyes softened, and she whispered to Elias, "I knew you would pass." Elias smiled, though his heart was still full from everything he had shared that day. But as he looked toward the distant community and back at the sisters standing beside him, he realized something important. Tala's test had measured his strength. Rena's test had measured his heart, and he had passed both. Now, one final test remained, the test of the whole community. And he didn't know if he was ready, but he knew this: he would try with everything he had. The day after Rena approved him, Elias woke with a strange mix of hope and worry. 2 tests were behind him, but the one ahead felt heavier than both combined. Tala's test had tested his strength. Rena's test had tested his truth. But the final one, the community's judgment, was bigger than all of that. It wasn't just a test from 2 sisters. It was a test from an entire world he hoped to join. He cared deeply for Maya, but he didn't want to be accepted only by her. He wanted her family, her traditions, her people to feel safe with him. He wanted to belong not by force, but by respect. That morning, when he arrived at Maya's home, the atmosphere felt different. There was movement everywhere. Women carried baskets of food. Men carried benches and wooden stands. Children ran across the yard, laughing and pointing as if they already knew something important was about to happen. Maya stood near the steps, her hands held together nervously. When she saw Elias, she walked toward him with soft steps. "Today is the gathering," she said. "The elders, families, and neighbors will all come. They will hear you speak. They will look at how you carry yourself. They will decide if your heart is steady." Elias nodded, trying to calm the tightness in his chest. "I understand." She reached for his hand this time, her fingers brushing his gently. "You don't have to be perfect. Just be honest like you were with Rena. That is enough." Her words helped more than she realized. Rena and Tala soon came outside as well. Tala had a serious expression, though her eyes held a quiet trust. Rena studied Elias for a moment before saying, "Don't be afraid. They only want to see the real you." Elias tried to laugh lightly. "That's the part that scares me." Rena actually smiled a little. "Good. Fear means you care." People started arriving within the hour. Some walked from nearby homes, others drove small trucks or rode on horseback. Elders arrived slowly, leaning on canes made from carved wood. Young people helped set up long tables and chairs. A large fire pit was prepared in case the gathering continued past sunset. The whole place felt alive, buzzing with voices, footsteps, and anticipation. Elias watched from a distance, feeling the weight of 100 unseen expectations. He didn't know what each person thought of him. Some smiled at him when they recognized him from the days he worked around the community. Others studied him cautiously, wanting to form their own opinion. Then the chief arrived. He was an older man with wise eyes and long gray hair tied neatly behind him. People stepped aside when he walked, out of respect. His presence was peaceful but commanding. Elias felt his heart beat faster as the chief approached him. "Elias Ward," the chief said in a calm, deep voice. "I have heard your name many times these past days." Elias took off his hat respectfully. "I'm honored, sir." The chief nodded. "You have passed the tests of the sisters. Now you face the test of all who love Maya. You must stand before them and speak truth. Not practiced words. Not pretty words. Only truth." "I'll do my best," Elias said quietly. "Your best will be enough if it is honest," the chief answered. The gathering officially began shortly after noon. Everyone formed a large circle around the open yard. Maya sat with her sisters and father near the front, her hands twisted together with anxious hope. Elias stood alone in the center for a moment, feeling every eye on him. He had never spoken in front of a crowd like this. He was a rancher, a quiet man, not someone used to giving speeches. But this wasn't just any speech. This was about his heart. Finally, the chief raised his hand, signaling silence. "We are gathered to decide if this man is worthy to join our family, our community, our traditions. He has worked. He has spoken truth. And now he must tell us why he wishes to marry Maya. The chief stepped back. Now it was Elias's turn. He swallowed hard. The quiet around him felt heavy. But in that silence, he found a small strength. He lifted his head slowly and looked at the people around him. "I'm not a man of fancy words," he began. His voice shook slightly, but he did not hide it. "I grew up on land far from here. My family is gone now. For a long time, I lived alone, thinking I didn't need anyone. I told myself that a man could be strong without a home, without people, without love." He paused. Maya leaned forward as if wanting to catch every word. "But the truth is," Elias continued, "a man can be strong and still be lonely. A man can survive storms and hard work. But that doesn't mean he has a place to go at the end of the day." The chief nodded slowly, encouraging him to continue. "When I met Maya," Elias said, his voice softening, "I saw someone who works with quiet strength. Someone who doesn't show pain, but carries more weight than most people ever see. And I wanted to help not because I wanted anything back, but because it felt right." He looked around again, trying to meet the eyes of the people listening. "Working beside her family, learning your traditions, being welcomed into your world even just a little." He paused, breathing deeply. "It made me realize how much I want to be part of something like this. Not just with Maya, but with all of you." A murmur spread through the crowd, soft, thoughtful. "I want to stand beside her," he said. "I want to be someone she can depend on, someone her family can trust. I know I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. I've lost people, and sometimes I still feel afraid of losing again. But love isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing. And I am willing with all that I am to honor her, protect her, learn from her, and respect her world." The wind brushed gently across the yard. Not a single person spoke. He finished quietly. "If you accept me, I won't take her away. I'll stay by her side, with your traditions, your land, your family, and I will do everything I can to make her life stronger, not smaller." Silence followed his last words, deep and contemplative. The chief stepped forward again. He looked at the crowd, and each person gave either a nod or a thoughtful expression. Finally, the chief turned to Elias. "Your heart is steady," he said. "Your words carry truth. Truth does not hide. It stands even when the voice shakes. The sisters approve you. Now the community accepts you as well." A warm rush of relief swept through Elias so quickly, he almost lost his breath. Maya covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes not from sadness, but from joy. Rena smiled proudly, and Tala nodded with approval. The chief placed his hand on Elias's shoulder. "You may join our family." People began clapping softly at first, then louder, until the entire yard filled with warm applause. Children smiled. Elders nodded, and neighbors patted Elias's back as they approached to congratulate him. Maya stepped forward, tears still shining. Elias met her eyes, and for a moment the entire world felt small and peaceful. "You did it," she whispered. "I did it for you," he replied. "No," she said gently. "You did it because you are a good man." Elias felt a warmth in his chest deeper than anything he had known. For the first time in many years, he didn't feel like an outsider. He felt home, truly home. But the journey wasn't over. One final part remained, the acceptance ceremony, and it would change everything. The evening after the community accepted Elias, the sky glowed with shades of orange and soft purple. A gentle wind moved across the land, carrying the smell of burning sage and fresh earth. Families gathered near the fire pit, talking and laughing. Children ran around with excitement, aware that something important was happening even if they didn't fully understand it. The air felt full of warmth, full of hope, full of new beginnings. Elias stood quietly near the edge of the gathering, watching everything with a feeling he didn't know how to name. It wasn't pride. It wasn't relief. It was something deeper, something peaceful, something he hadn't felt in many years. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he belonged somewhere. Maya walked toward him, her dress moving lightly in the wind. She looked beautiful, not because of what she wore, but because of how happy she looked. Her eyes were bright with a mix of relief, joy, and quiet love. When she reached him, she smiled softly. "You did more than pass the tests," she said. "You touched their hearts." Elias lowered his head slightly, shy from the compliment. "I just told the truth. That's why it mattered," she replied. Before he could answer, the chief raised his cane and signaled for everyone to gather around. The circle formed again. But this time, the atmosphere felt more relaxed, more tender. New faces joined, and everyone seemed eager to witness the final step of the traditional acceptance. The chief stood in the center with Tala and Rena beside him. Maya and Elias were guided forward until they stood facing each other within the large circle. Elias felt nervous again, but this time it wasn't fear, it was the overwhelming feeling of something sacred about to happen. The chief lifted a ceremonial blanket, woven with the colors of their family. Deep reds, soft browns, warm golds, and gentle whites. Each color represented something important: strength, earth, unity, and peace. He spoke with a steady voice. "This blanket was made by our mothers and grandmothers. It carries blessings, memories, and the hope for a strong future. When we place it upon two people, it means they are no longer walking alone. Their lives are joined not only to each other, but to all of us." Elias's heart thumped harder. He had stood in front of storms, long winters, and lonely years. But nothing felt as powerful as this moment. Tala stepped forward first. Her expression was serious, but her eyes were warm. "Elias," she said, "you showed me your strength, not just in your hands, but in your patience. You worked without complaint, without pride, and without pretending to be someone else. Our family needs someone who stands steady. You proved you can do that." She touched the blanket gently, as if giving her blessing through her fingertips. Rena followed. Her voice was softer than usual, filled with emotion. "You showed me your truth. Not all men are brave enough to speak honestly about their fears and their past. But you did. You faced your own pain so you could build something better. Maya deserves someone who doesn't hide from life. You are that man." She placed her hand on the blanket too. The chief looked at Elias. "You passed the final test. You earned the trust of the sisters and the approval of the community. Now you must show that you accept this family as your own." Elias nodded slowly. "I do," he said, in a quiet, sincere voice. The chief motioned for Maya to step closer. She faced Elias, and the soft glow of the fire danced in her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the overwhelming emotion of the moment. "Are you ready?" she whispered. "I've been ready since the day I first saw you carrying those water buckets," he replied. Maya laughed softly, tears forming in her eyes. "That was a hard day. And you still kept going," he said. "That's when I knew you were the strongest person I'd ever met." The chief placed the blanket gently over their shoulders, covering both of them in the same warm cloth. The moment it settled on them, it felt like the world grew quiet. Even the wind seemed to slow down. Respecting the tradition, with the blanket shared between them, Elias and Maya stood connected physically, emotionally, spiritually. The chief raised his voice so everyone could hear. "From this moment on, Elias is part of our family. He is not an outsider. He is not a visitor. He is one of us." The crowd murmured with approval, some nodding deeply, others smiling with pride. Maya's father stood next. He was a man of few words, much like Elias. He stepped forward slowly, placed a hand on Elias's shoulder, and said, "Welcome, son." The word son hit Elias harder than he expected. He swallowed, unable to speak for a moment. He hadn't heard anyone call him family in years, not since he lost his own. And now, hearing it again, he felt something inside him healing. Maya gently brushed her hand against his arm. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered. The celebration that followed was warm and filled with joy. Families served food. Children danced near the fire. and laughter echoed across the land. Tala brought Elias a warm plate of stew and teased him lightly, saying, "Don't expect me to go easy on you now, just because you passed." Rena laughed and added, "You'll learn quickly that joining our family means joining our arguments too." Elias grinned. "I'll take them. I've handled storms worse than your arguments." The sisters laughed together, something they didn't do often. Maya watched them, happiness glowing on her face. She walked beside Elias as they moved through the gathering, introducing him to people as her future husband. The community welcomed him with open hearts, telling stories, offering advice, and sharing old memories of Maya that made him smile. As the night deepened, the fire crackled softly, and stars filled the sky above them. Elias and Maya walked a little away from the crowd, standing beneath a tall tree. The blanket was still around them, warm against the cool night air. Maya looked up at him. "How do you feel?" Elias took a long breath, letting the peacefulness settle inside him. "Like I finally found a place where I'm meant to be." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Then you found home." He wrapped his arm around her gently, not pulling her close, but holding her with the quiet respect she had always deserved. The moonlight glowed softly over the land, and for the first time in many years, Elias felt a deep, calm happiness that touched every corner of his heart. He had come to help a family once, but in the end, that family chose him, and he knew that no matter what came in the future, storms, challenges, hardships, they would face it together. The cowboy who once lived alone under the wide sky now had a family, a place, and a love that would guide him for the rest of his life. And as Maya whispered, "Welcome home," Elias realized those two simple words were worth every test he had faced.